Good evening. It's a joy for me to be back in Lithuania. I think I was here 14 years ago at a conference, some times ago, but it's good to be back. Just for an introduction to my person, I'm Johannes, I'm from Germany. I'm married, 4 kids, so 1 wife, 4 kids. Yeah, I mean, nowadays in Europe, you have to say that, you have all the different combinations. 2 wives, no kids, So I have one wife, 4 kids. This is my wife. This is a panda bear. This is not my wife. These are my kids. And I have started, together with my wife, the House of Prayer, which Neringa is part of. If you have no idea what a House of Prayer is, this used to be a fitness studio. Now it's a different type of fitness that we do here. So there is one room, which is the prayer room. It's not so big, but the important thing is that the prayer in this small room never goes out. So if you go there at 3 a.m. in the morning or 6 p.m. in the evening, 9 a.m. in the morning, is always somebody praying. It's a small group of people who started that. We are maybe 70 staff members. And it started little, it started very tiny. But then we had our first conference and our second conference. Suddenly 2,000 people showed up. And some years later, our little prayer conference looked like that. And some years later, our little prayer conference looked like that. And people came from all over. And you have to understand, Germany is not a Christian country, right? People don't go to church. But we realized that there is something attractive that drove people. So this next January, we are going to have this conference again. It's called MEA. You are all invited to come. It's in January. We expect 12,000 people there. But it all started in this little prayer room. This evening, I'm not going to say a lot more about the prayer room, but I want to speak about how do we bring the gospel. How do we speak the gospel in what I call a post-Christian world? I call this the gospel and the post-modern self. What is the post-modern self? This is how people see themselves in our present times. So you have to understand, we are living in very different times than 50 years ago. People say that we are living in a post-modern time. And I want to speak about how to reach people for the gospel in these post-modern times. And I need you to think with me this evening. It will be intense, will be some philosophy, but I think it's very important to understand we are living in a different situation. So what I do is, I speak about Christian things on the internet. This is my YouTube channel. I post videos on current things like Gaza or gender or whatever is going on in our world from a Christian perspective. And with that, I reach around 5 million people in Germany, most of which are not Christians. There's also an English channel that I have. I have an English channel on YouTube and on Instagram. If you want to check this out, this is my English channel. And I want to share with you what I have learned how to communicate the gospel in a post-Christian, in a non-Christian world. There is one story in the book of Acts about Paul that is very, very enlightening for our situation today. So the story is like that. Paul goes to Athens. Athens, back then, is the center of the cultural life. And he goes right to Mars Hill. Mars Hill is where all the people meet. This is where they discuss current philosophies. It's very interesting. There are many good Christians who do not want to go where the discussions are. They stay within the church. They stay within the Christian boundaries. But Paul, he enters the sphere where culture is discussed. And what happens next? It's in Acts 17. Now, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, his spirit was provoked as he saw that the city was full of idols. So, for a pious Jew, it's very offensive to see a city filled with pagan worship, all those different religions. He's angry. But then he spoke to the people and he said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with the inscription, 'To the unknown God.'" This is very important. Again, Paul, a pious Jew, goes to a Gentile city where nobody believes in the God of Israel. And he's offended. All those pagan worship, just like maybe you are offended if you look at the current culture. You know, you see all the things going on TV and you are offended. You say, this culture is going in a bad direction. The same with Paul. But now Paul doesn't start to preach, "You evil people of Athens, you idol worshippers, you are on the wrong track." But he says something very different. He says, "Men of Athens, I perceive that you are very religious." So he starts from a very positive perspective. He says, basically, you are interested in religious things. You're starting from a wrong angle, maybe, but basically, you are interested in religion. And then he says, because as I passed along, I saw all those temples, and he found one altar. And the inscription on the altar was, "For an unknown God." It's very interesting. He looks around Athens and he finds an altar with the inscription, "For an unknown God." And he says, "This is a question that you are asking, and I have an answer for you." There's a story that somebody once wrote on a wall, a big inscription or a graffiti, "Jesus is the answer." Or maybe a Christian had it on his t-shirt, "Jesus is the answer," right? The story goes that somebody wrote below that sentence, "Jesus is the answer." Yeah, but what's the question? Before you can give an answer, you have to understand the question. Oftentimes, the church, the Christians, we try to give an answer where we have not understood the question. We have not taken time to analyze and to understand the question. What is the question in our current times? What is the question Gen Z has? The young people have. They don't run around and ask, who is the unknown God? They don't. I want to show you one question that most probably you are unaware of. It's not a very religious question, but I think it's out there. If you want to understand young people, if you want to understand the post-Christian society, you have to understand one question. And the question is, what is reality? What is reality? Reality is a philosophical concept, right? I mean, reality is very abstract. So, I need you to think with me a little bit now. If you would have asked somebody 300 years ago, what is reality? He would have given you a description that I now call reality old. So this is the old concept. This is up to maybe 300 years ago. Most people would have said that. If you would ask them, what is reality? They would say, well, reality, open up your eyes. There is a house, that's reality. There is a mountain, that's reality. There's other people, that's reality. There's the king, that's reality. And if you want to know what's reality, so that's you, right? You have to open up your eyes and to see what that reality is. Clear? Is that logic? So, reality is something on the outside. This is reality and this is you, right? But over the last 200 years, this picture has changed. 500 years ago, there was a philosopher named René Descartes. And he said, you know what? What is reality? The house, the king, the mountain, maybe that's just an illusion. Maybe it's not a real mountain. Maybe it's not a real king. How can I start with something I cannot doubt? And Descartes starts with his famous sentence, cogito ergo sum. He says, if you want to know what reality is, you have to look on the inside. I think, therefore I am. Everything else you can question, right? I can question that Neringer exists. I can question that this church exists. But I cannot question whether I exist or not. And out of that, a new concept of reality was formed, which I call reality new. It's very abstract up to now, but it will become clearer. Some years ago, I saw a video, a movie. It was a movie, it's called Gravity. Anyone seen it? It was a great movie, Gravity. Right. The story goes like that. There is a female astronaut who has to repair something on the outside of a spacecraft. So she leaves the spacecraft to repair something on the outside, and she's connected to the spacecraft, but then she loses the connection. She loses the connection to the spacecraft. And she starts to fly away. And if you think it through, at first you could say, floating off into space is a beautiful idea, right? You can fly. You don't have gravity anymore. Nothing that keeps you down anymore. You're finally free to fly. Who wouldn't want to fly away? Right? But if you think it through, the space is not a very friendly place. And if I think about our culture nowadays, it reminds me on this scene. So we started some 100 years ago believing realities on the outside. Now we believe realities on the inside, which of course has many positive things. If you don't believe that, what Descartes started some 500 years ago, today it's everywhere. I give you some proof. Reality is on the inside. Just think about some discussions. What is truth? Well, there is not the truth. There is your truth and my truth. What's true for you not necessarily is true for me. Does this sound familiar? What's good and wrong? Well, what's good for you doesn't necessarily need to be good for me. This is my perspective. In some cultures, some things are good, in others not. What is beautiful? There is not just the beautiful. Beauty is on the eye of the beholder. What you find beautiful, I find ugly. Reality is on the inside. What's the meaning of life? Everybody has to find out for himself. Right? What's the good life? The good life is you have to be true to your authentic self, to express what's inside of you. Does this sound familiar? If not, you've not watched Disney movies for 20 years. Because this has been the message of all Disney movies. Do your true self, find who you really are and express it. Truth is on the inside. Reality is on the inside. If you want to know who you are, don't listen to all those voices. Listen to the voice inside of you. Right? And with this framework, a sentence makes sense that a German politician said 2 years ago. He said, what gender a person has, nobody can tell from the outside. Right? Only you from the inside, only you can say, only you can tell what gender you are. Because the assumption is reality is only on the inside. What is the meaning of life? You have to find it for yourself. What is your truth? You have to find it for yourself. What is to be authentic? You have to find it for yourself. It's on the inside. So this postmodern self, at first glance, looks very positive. This has an aspect of liberation. So you're no longer bound, right? We are living in very free societies. 100 years ago, what would have been your profession? Well, the same profession as your parents. What would have been your religion? Well, the same religion as your parents. There is not a great choice. So we are living in times where you can decide for yourself, right? Which is good. But if you have to decide for yourself, this also means you have to decide for yourself. So in Germany, you have to decide which university degree you are going to get. So in Germany, you have the choice out of 20,000 different university degrees. So this postmodern self is able to choose. It's free, it's liberated to choose, but it's also a sense of being overwhelmed, right? You not only have to choose which out of 20,000 university degrees that you want to get, but also what is right and wrong, what religion is true, what's the meaning of life, and which out of 64 genders you are. That's a lot. So I believe that we are living in a time where more and more people are saying, well, yeah, I'm free, but I'm also overwhelmed. It's just too much. So think about reality being on the inside. How happy are you if you think about yourself? Have you ever tried thinking about yourself all the time? How happy does this make you? Not so much. There is a connection between introversion and depression. The more you think about yourself, the more depressed you are. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this picture of new reality that started as a liberation, you can be who you want to be. You can choose whatever you want. It started as a liberation. Ends just like the astronaut lost in space. Floating off into a dark abyss without anything to hold on to. Therefore, sad and depressed. We are living in the freest society that ever walked the planet. You are free to choose whatever, and we are living in the most depressed society that ever lived. And there is a connection. If you look on the inside, and this is your reality, what do you see on the inside? If you see on the inside, you see your emotions, right? And we are living in a culture that preaches your emotions are your reality. If you feel like it, then it's good, right? And there is a partial truth to that. Your emotions are important, but there is one downside of that. Your emotions also are the thing about you that are most easily manipulated. If you've ever encountered somebody who's good at manipulating, he can twist your emotions. He can play with your emotions. So this postmodern self is also easily manipulated. And of course, we are living in a time where we carry around those devices all the time, which are made to constantly manipulate our emotions. It's called advertisement. Ads are made to manipulate your emotions. So if you're an astronaut, if you're flying around, you can be easily twisted in this direction or in this direction. And also, if you believe that your emotions are your reality, you are also very, very easily offended. Whenever somebody disagrees with you, I'm in a different position, I have a different opinion, you feel offended. Who are you to attack me? If you want to understand modern, postmodern culture, you have to understand those 5 characteristics. And these all are fruits of this concept of reality. Reality is on the inside. So, this is the question. You know, people don't run around with the question, what is reality? But this is where they start. And this is the source for things like that. This is a graph, this is a stat of major depression among US teens. Probably, I don't know if you can see it on the back. So, we've seen an increase of 161% of depression since 2010. We've seen an increase of 145% increase of girls since 2010. So, we're living in the freest society and the most depressed society at the same time. We are living in a very positive world in many aspects. People say, well, we are living in a bad world. We're not living in a bad world. We're not living in a bad world. This is a graph that shows the prevalence of undernourishment in developing countries. This means hunger. Hunger is going down, right? So we're living better and better all throughout the world if it comes to hunger, but still we are more depressed than we've ever been. How is that possible? Some people believe that when people do better economically, if they have more to eat, then they will be more happy. But this is not true, because economically the world is doing much better. But psychologically we're doing worse than ever. How is that possible? I really believe it has to do with that problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everything in this old picture was right. I'm not saying that everything in this new picture is wrong. I'm just saying that there is one piece missing. I ask you a question. If you are an astronaut in the space, what keeps you from flying away? Connection? Connection to what? It's true. Connection to what? Yes, and what's the characteristic of the spaceship? Can the spaceship be of the same size like yourself? It's bigger. So we are all astronauts, but we don't fly away. Why don't we fly away? Because we are attached to something bigger. What is that something bigger called? Planet Earth. Right? Planet Earth keeps us from flying away. It's called gravity. Right? Without the planet Earth, you would fly away. And in space, you would die. In space, you would die. It's very interesting, gravity, that something is bigger than yourself. It's the same word that the Bible uses for a very different concept, namely the glory of God. In Hebrew, the glory of God is called kabod. And kabod means to be heavy. To be heavy, to have a big mass. In Hebrew understanding, something that has a lot of mass is important. And metaphorically speaking, a person that matters a lot, it's the same word in English, the matter is a substance. A person who matters a lot has a lot of glory. Planet Earth has a lot of matter, Therefore, it attracts us. And what we have lost in the postmodern times is something that keeps us from flying away. Therefore, what I believe is a society that loses sight of the divine gradually loses sight of the human also. So, in the last 200 years, we tried to define reality without God. And we find ourselves in a situation where we are unable to answer the question, what is a human? If you go to a public discussion, what's the difference between a human and an animal? People are not able to tell you the difference. Say, maybe we shouldn't eat animals because animals are living beings too, and what's the difference between an animal and human? I don't know. We don't know anymore what a human is. We don't know what a man is and a woman is. We have lost the concept of human because we've lost the concept of the divine. And the divine means that there is something bigger than ourselves. There's a planet Earth that we belong to. So, this sounds very negative, but it's not negative. If you are 30 or 40 or older, probably you come from this generation. Your parents, society defines who you are. And then in the post-Soviet times, it was a little bit later. We had it a little bit earlier in the West. The liberation to say, you know what, tradition, family and church and state, away with it. I want to define for myself who I am. This is the generation of those people who are 30 or 40 or 50. Right? Freedom. You can do whatever you want. What I believe is that we now have a new generation who see this situation, that sees that situation and says, it's not good. And I believe there are three needs. There are three new desires that arise in this generation, which are open doors for the gospel. You have to understand the question before you give the answer. Paul addresses the altar for the unknown God before pointing towards God. And I believe there are at least three needs, especially amongst young people in this situation, that we as Christians can and should address. The first one is life orientation. There is just too much of everything, too many choices. There are Christians who are afraid to give clear advice. They say, whatever's good for you, do it. I don't want to impose anything on you. But there is a whole generation who is so confused, they say, I don't know how to live life. I need orientation. And I promise you, you do an internet video on YouTube or you do a seminar about basic life things, and people will love it. They don't know anymore how to live a relationship, how to work a job, how to apply for a job, how to structure your day, how to deal with anxiety. They don't know anymore. We have to bring life orientation. See, this astronaut, if you are lost in space, and there is nothing around. It's just floating off. This is very frightening. It's not a good place. We need something like an anchor. We need something like an orientation. We need something like a framework. And we have to be able to tell people there are some things that are reliable, that are true. We mustn't be afraid to bring life orientation. The second thing, it's a big open question in our society, the whole topic of emotional health. This astronaut is not doing well. Those people are afraid. They are lonely. They are depressed. They are filled with anxieties. Anxieties, depression, mental health is one of the greatest problems of our society. And it's a paradox. We have much to eat. You can sleep with whomever you want. You can be on the internet the whole day. And you're totally depressed. What's the answer? And I want to be very provocative. As Christians, as a church, do we have the answers? Have we thought about that? There is one real problem with emotional health, which is you can only speak about it if you have it. Are we, as Christian communities, are we examples where we live emotional health? This means healthy relationships. I'm going to speak about that in Encounters tomorrow in case you want to go there. Can we speak about how to overcome anxieties? How to get rid of depressions? How to live healthy relationships? See, our religion, our faith needs to come down from the head into the real world. Again, you do a seminar, you do a YouTube video, you do a weekend about how to overcome depression, and you have a full house. Because this is the topic. Third topic, third need. Counter-cultural ideas. I said that this astronaut is easily manipulated. Well, if everything that you have as reality is on your inside, you can easily be twisted and shifted and pushed into that direction by the media. And I tell you something, people hate it. Especially you people in Lithuania and the Baltic nations, those of you who are old enough, you know what it feels like to be manipulated by the state, by the press, and by the media. You know that. You've been there. Right? People hate it. Nobody wants that. But we're living in an age where technology and media is so potent, can easily push you from one direction to the other, and people hate it. I just give an example. It's very politically incorrect to say that, but I show you a picture that was taken in London some years ago. And this was a street during one of those Pride, whatever, March festivals. And in June, fitting to that Pride festival, I can show you all the logos of all the different brands changing in the rainbow colors. Well, you can think about the whole rainbow thing whatever you want, but I'm from a country, the last time, coming back, I'm from Germany, and the last time we've seen cities covered with flags like that was a very bad time. So people don't like that. I think people people yearn, people crave for something else. And the point is not the rainbow LGBTQ thing. It's not, that's not my topic here. But people want ideas that challenge them. And sometimes the church says, oh, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to be too loud, to be offensive. But people thirst for that. They feel lost and they want something real. They want something countercultural. We need voices who are willing to say something nobody wants to hear. We don't need a church that says the same thing the culture already says. Right? I mean, people long for something different. They want to hear a different perspective. I have such a good news for you. We're living in the age of illusion and of deception, and of course those devices help us with that. If you're an astronaut like that, you're fed with your own personal reality all day long. But I have good news for you. Reality doesn't care. Right? I give you a very unphilosophical definition for reality. Reality is the wall you run against if you've been following an illusion. Right? Reality is the wall that you run against if you've been following your illusion. And reality is something very solid. Right? Eventually, reality kicks back. Right? Therefore, truth always is on our side. It's a little bit funny, it's a little bit mean, but it's also a little bit funny. Therefore, I show you a picture that demonstrates that principle pretty. This is a picture about a video about somebody who has a VR glass on, a virtual reality. So he's in his computer game. So watch this video. So he's in his computer game. Yeah, it's I shouldn't show something like that in a Christian conference, but you wanted it. So reality is the wall you run into if you've been following an illusion. And I believe that our society is on a collision course with reality. We are not living in reality. And we have to bring back this. We have to bring back reality. What is the big question people are asking today? Yeah, that's the big question. They long for truth. They long for reality. And sometimes people believe, Christianity and church, this is old-fashioned, this is what we used to believe in former times, but now we have advanced. See, there are some things that are true and never change. Some things never change. Not religious, but let's think about the chess game. Anybody here plays chess? Chess. Chess hasn't changed for the last 1,200 years. It was invented in India around 1,000 years ago, but it's just the way it is. Nobody ever came up with the idea, let's change it. Oh, it's all black and white. Let's introduce a third color. Let's introduce green. Right? Or not just queen and king, let's introduce something else, an angel. No, this would be another game, but chess is chess. Or think about the piano. Anybody plays piano? Right. The piano, 3 of you, all right? The piano has 88 keys. It's only black and white. It hasn't changed for the last 400 years. It's a piano. You could say, well, let's come up with not 88 keys, but 250 keys. And not just black and white, but yellow and green. You can do that, but it wouldn't make the piano better. The piano is perfect the way it is. right? There are some things that don't change. Or think about, if you're a mathematician, I'm not, I hate math, but if you think about a triangle, you know, all those angles without a triangle, the old Greeks 2,500 years ago, they have already calculated that. This has never changed. It's not like, oh, this is old-fashioned and now we come up with a new calculation for the triangle. No, it's not. The triangle hasn't changed on Wednesday when it was the same on Monday, right? It doesn't change. Or something less philosophical, beer. Beer hasn't changed for 500 years. It's still the same ingredients. You could say, let's add some vinegar. Let's add some grapefruit juice. You can do that, but you wouldn't improve upon it, right? Why am I saying all that to you? Sometimes we're living in those postmodern times where people say, you know, church and Christianity, this is old-fashioned, this is for old people. I stumbled upon a beautiful verse in the book of Proverbs, Old Testament. And Proverbs says, do not move the ancient boundary stone that was put in place by your ancestors. This means there are some boundaries, and it's good that there are some boundaries. The English writer G.K. Chesterton once said, it's a very wise word. He said, if you find a fence somewhere, a fence or a boundary somewhere, make sure you know why that fence is there before you tear it down. If you're out there in the fields and you see the fence and you say, I don't need that fence, let's cut it down. Maybe that fence prevents the hungry lions from entering your garden, right? Before you tear down the fence, make sure you understand why the fence exists. We are living in a time that says, oh, let's remove the fences. What possibly could go wrong? A lot goes wrong. Do not remove the ancient boundary stone. Friends, there is one thing that keeps the astronaut from flying away, which is gravity. In the Hebrew, kabot means to be heavy. This means there is something that has more weight than you, that is more important than you, and it doesn't control you, it doesn't make you small, but it gives you a connection that keeps you grounded, that keeps you from flying away. The beautiful thing is, Gen Z, young people feel that. They feel that. This year in France, which is probably one of the most secular countries in the whole of Europe, this year in France, on Easter, 17,200 people were baptized in the Catholic Church alone, on Easter alone. This is the highest number, 17,800 even. It's the highest number ever counted. Last year it was 10,000. The year before it was 6,000. The majority of those people were between 18 and 25. This is happening in France. There is a whole generation that says, we are lost in space, but we're looking for something. What about the UK? Well, in the UK, Gen Z is leading a massive rise in church attendance. Young people are starting to go to church again in the UK. This is a stat that shows that Gen Z are twice as likely to identify as spiritual and half as likely to identify as atheists as their parents' generation. So Gen Z are half as likely to identify as atheists as their parents. Actually, spiritual Gen Z also drives an increase in Bible studies, so they start to read the Bible again. This is UK. I don't know about Lithuania. In Germany, the effect is not as strong, but we see the beginning of it. Last year, in the UK magazine The Spectator, this was the most read article by Justin Brierley. It's called "A Christian Revival is Underway in Britain." Church attendance, just be very attentive here. Church attendance for male Gen Z, this is male young people between 18 and 25, over the last 5 years in Great Britain, has an increase of 500%, a 5-fold increase of young men going to church within the last 5 years in Great Britain. What about Sweden? Again, also a very liberal, very post-Christian society. This article studied who is the most important influencer amongst Gen Z, and they found out, will Jesus be Sweden's most popular influencer in 2025? Jesus could be the influencer of 25. Young people look to authority figures for guidance. And even in the internet, famous figures like atheist Richard Dawkins, who hates Christianity, now says, I'm a Christian. I'm a cultural Christian, at least. The most important, most influential YouTuber on the world, no, YouTuber, that's not true, podcaster on the world, Joe Rogan, invites Christians and people on the YouTube sphere, young people watching YouTube, are more and more really open for Christianity. What am I trying to say? How can we bring this, how can we invite this astronaut to land? How can we invite him to find Jesus as his answer? Especially for Gen Z. What I'm closing with that now. What I'm saying now mostly refers to young people, but it's not just the young people anymore. It's actually all generations. First of all, they want something different. They are fed up with what they have been fed by society. They are longing for something different. And that something different is not... Sometimes the church has preached an easy gospel. You don't have to change. God loves you and everything is nice. I think Gen Z wants Christianity not although, but because it is strict. It's very interesting. There are international studies done. Those denominations, those churches that actually attract young people are churches with a clear message. And the other religion that also attracts young people is radical Islam. And radical Islam says you're not allowed to drink alcohol, not allowed to smoke, not allowed to have sex outside of marriage, you have to pray 5 times a day, you're not allowed to eat pork. It's very strict. And young people say, yes, I want that. And Christians say, oh, kumbaya, you don't have to change, everything is okay. And young people say, I'm not interested. So they are interested in something that gives them orientation, that tells them what is truth, how to do life. They want orientation on how to actually live life, how to live a relationship, how to raise kids, how to deal with money, how to deal with anxiety, how to structure the day. Gen Z also has a strong desire to belong. Because look at this astronaut. He's very lonely. Young people are in their rooms. 30 years ago, all the parents were afraid of young people drinking alcohol, smoking, and going to parties and having sex. Young people today, they don't go to parties, they don't smoke, they don't drink, and they don't have sex. They are in their room on their phones, playing, being depressed, and watching porn. That's all they do. So they have a great desire to belong somewhere, to encounter family, to have community. Gen Z is very interesting also. They have a great fascination for openness for tradition and liturgy. It's for us Catholics, for those of you who are Catholics, it's very good news. The first generation, after many, many decades, who are more interested in liturgical forms of worship than open forms of worship. So they love to pray the rosary. They encounter things like adoration again. They love that. Not everybody does, but it's a significant trend. One thing, I don't know who of you is familiar with TikTok. It's the most important app for the people under 18. And there is one massive hashtag, one trend that has reached not millions but billions of uploads, which is called hashtag Twitch Talk. Witch Talk. Sorry, I had that wrong. It's not Twitch, it's Witch Talk. Witch Talk is a hashtag only for witchcraft. So this is people who upload videos about satanic or witchcraft or occult things on the internet. So what I'm trying to say is, young people don't have to question, is the spiritual world real? They know the spiritual world is real. They just want to know, how do I get rid of the negative things? So my question is, where are Christian groups where people say, you have experienced the demonic, you can get free of it? I just give you a very, very simple example from Germany. 1 year ago, I have uploaded a video on YouTube about the devil. In Germany, for the last 50 years in the church, nobody has spoken about the devil. Nobody believes in the devil anymore. This is old-fashioned, right? So I did a video about the devil, and in my YouTube channel, many people follow me who are not Christians. And I had multiple comments under my video, people saying, I know the devil is real. I just don't believe in God. This is a very normal answer for a Gen Z person. They know there is witchcraft. They know there are demons. They know there is the devil. They just don't know that there is something stronger. They just don't know there is God. So, how do we answer that? Gen Z is craving for what I call, it's a little bit offensive, maybe muscular Christianity. I think about my 16-year-old son who goes to the gym 5 times a week. It's a whole generation who wants to be challenged. They don't want a Christianity to say, yeah, stay in bed, you know, you don't have to do anything. But they want to be challenged. They want to be called to greatness. They want to be called to sanctity. They want to be called to a holy effort, especially the young man. Muscular Christianity. And this is the golden ground, touching the holy. There is a great desire amongst Gen Z, basically amongst all people, to experience the sacred, to be touched by transcendence, to experience God. And my My thesis, and I want to finish with that. If we offer the gospel as something bold and different, that actually also costs something, that gives a clear orientation, which is warm and is welcoming and gives you a place to belong, a real family, that gives you tradition and a touch of the holy, experience with the holy that gets you free from all the negative addictions and all your emotional problems. If we are able to offer that, then Christianity is highly relevant in a postmodern culture. It will be Jesus is the answer for that question. It will be the proclamation of the gospel for the altar of the unknown God. And I believe that great times are ahead for people, for the church, for Christians who bring the gospel into that society, because hearts are open, people are hungry, and it's time for harvest, I really believe. I want to quickly close with a short prayer, and then we're going to go into Q&A, I think. Lord, I thank you for what's taking place in many nations in Europe today. I thank you that you are the way, the truth, and the light for this generation, for Lithuania, the same as in Germany, as in France, and UK. And Lord, I ask you that you send your Holy Spirit right now to embolden us, to give us strength, to boldly proclaim your gospel, to pray for a fresh outpouring of your Holy Spirit in our nations, to make us bold witnesses for your gospel, and to bring in this generation by the thousands and by the millions to hear and experience you. Amen. Thank you.
So I have the privilege of being part of Ramintoja community which hosts the event, and therefore we thought that we would like to ask several questions. So first question would be about these open doors and open doors through Alpha course. I know that there are a lot of people that are serving on Alpha teams that came here to listen to your talk, because that very much resonates with what we do in Alpha mission. And the question would be, especially here in Ramintoja, we are very much keen on Alpha, and we are quite good at invitation, hospitality, opening the doors, opening the hearts, and people come, and usually they come with, as you mentioned, they are looking for peace, to get rid of anxiety, and that's the beginning. The first step is all nice and easy, but then the following steps, because once they just come to Mass, they feel this peace, but somehow, as one person once said, from come and see to come and die, which is the ultimate Jesus asked, is a very long way, and how to, maybe you have some insights, how to accompany people along the way so that they would not get stuck in this consumerism, which is just, I feel good and I'm enough. I don't know if that's...
Somebody once said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. What is the main thing in the gospel? The main thing in the gospel is not me, it's not what I do, but it's Him. So what keeps the astronaut on the ground is the holiness. Kavod means glory, the glory of God. So I believe the first important thing to train people is to have a deep prayer life and to encounter God both in personal prayer and in community prayer. We also need community prayer. We pray together in worship and people encounter God. And the funny thing is, if you get closer to God, He will show you your blind spots. So, for example, in the House of Prayer, what we have a 10-month program of discipleship training. It's like a school for young people, and they spend 4 hours every day in the prayer room, which of course is a lot. But those 4 hours in the prayer room, they save us a lot of teaching, because if you spend time in the presence of God, they come with their questions, and they say, should I change my life in this and this direction? So God Himself puts the finger in the wound. What I'm saying is, our missions and evangelization should be not focused on changing people's behavior, but for them to know Jesus better, to encounter Jesus in the Bible, in personal prayer life. And the more we do that, people will be confronted with their blind spots. And then discipleship is accompanying this. They have a question like, okay, how should I deal with this relationship? How should I deal with this addiction? And then we can operate with that. But our main emphasis, in my opinion, needs to be to strengthen that personal relationship with Jesus.
Now a question from the audience. Julius asks, what can the Catholic Church do to attract more men? Which topics should it emphasize?
I love this question because both Judaism and Islam, they attract men, and the Catholics don't. Some ideas. First of all, men need safe spaces where there are only men. Right? If I meet with some male friends, there is a certain kind of humor that only takes place when the ladies are not present. There's a certain energy, right? And sometimes you need that. It's easier to attract men to men-only things. First insight. Second insight is muscular Christianity. You have a man wants to be called to greatness. It's very interesting. Men don't come to church, but if a church needs to be renovated and you ask men to help with the renovation, they want to help. So challenge them to be part of something great, to do something with their own hand. And the third thing is, you need to be a man to attract men. So ask yourself, who is a person, who is a man, who is a real man, who is not a boy? And honestly, I think as men we don't have enough good male examples. What does it look like to be a husband, a fighter, a gentleman, a father as a Christian? If you have a person like that, he will eventually draw other men. But we have to target men. It's very sad, but have you heard that stat? If the father is a Christian, the probability for the kids to also be Christians is like 80%. If the mother is Christian, the percentage is like 50%. So the father has a much higher influence on the spiritual dynamics of the family. Therefore, maybe Islam and Judaism are right in focusing on the men. Maybe. And we don't do that. And all the Catholic groups are far more women than men. So we just started next April I'm going to do a gentleman conference in Germany. What does it mean to be a gentleman? And the first emails I got is from women. Can we come too? We want to see all those great gentlemen. I said, no, you have to do your own conference. Gentlewoman.
So the second question from Ramintoja side, or actually from the Christian Professional Association, because we have quite a few members of this association in our community, is this truth, the gospel that is quite, as you said, quite salty and not very soft and nice, and not everybody likes, but how to write the right balance between this saltiness and love, and how to the open doors, but then how to not to have the rejection, or because it's
not so easy to answer, because it depends what your blind spot is. There are some people who are too soft, and they need to learn to be more clear. And then there are people who are very harsh, who need to be more loving. We really need the balance of the both. What I love more is don't speak about the sin, speak about the beauty of holiness. Don't speak about the evil, speak about the glory of the good, right? Don't speak about, don't speak about evil, but point to the beauty of the good. And this is more inviting than telling people what is all evil. But also be clear. There are some people who are never clear. And I think we need to be clear, but also very kind. We need the balance of the both.
Thank you. The next question, yeah, we're running out of microphones. Next question, which is by Antanas, and I'm asking questions, the ones that have the most votes. So this is the priority. Antanas asks, what is your opinion about the natural family planning as the only way to live sexual life for Catholics? It looks that only a minority live in this way.
When Pope Paul VI came up with the rejection of the anti-baby pill in the 60s, everybody laughed at him. He said, "Oh, this is so backward." The funny thing is, I'm in contact with many non-Christian, spiritual or non-spiritual people, and nowadays in Germany, the whole thing of natural family planning outside the Christian community is growing. More and more women don't want to take the pill. They say, I don't want to eat hormones all day. So what shows me is that sometimes the church needs to be okay with being called old-fashioned for 20, 30 or 40 years. I think nowadays there are very many young women who say, I want to respect the natural cycle of my body. I want to go with that. So I don't see that this is not attractive. I don't see that. It was very unattractive 20 years ago. It's not anymore. It's not anymore today. But I would say, as it comes for sexuality, the church should not have morals as the core of its teaching. I'm all for the Catholic sexual moral teachings, 100%. But it's not the main thing. The main thing is that people know about Jesus Christ. And what they do with their sexuality is important, but it's not the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is that people don't know about God. And if the church is primarily known about what they think about sexuality, then we have a problem. Because Jesus spoke maybe 1% about sexuality, 99% about something else. So we should have the priorities right there. And morals, what we do, is not in the center of the gospel. The center of the gospel is who God is, what Jesus did for us. This is the center of it. And what we do is then the secondary part. It's not the core of it.
So next year, in June 7-12, we will have in Vilnius a very big event, World Apostolic Congress of Divine Mercy. So in this context, speaking of the gospel and the relation between the divine mercy and the gospel, what would be your insights on the message that we could send during that event and in preparation to this event to non-church people, how to present the best way the event that would happen, how to use this opportunity to speak to the secular citizens of Vilnius?
Well, I love the fact that you are asking the question, because you have to understand at least 90% of the inhabitants of Lithuania have no idea what you're talking about. And they're not interested in it at all. So we have to think from their perspective what could be interesting for them. I believe that if you speak about divine mercy, the question of mercy is very relevant. We are living in a very merciless society. If you do a politician, if he does something wrong, or a pop star, he or she is gone. So I think in our whole communication, we have to think way more from the consumer perspective, from the other perspective. What do the people understand of it? And come up with some good ideas how to formulate the main message so that they can understand it. It's not an easy, it's a very superficial answer that I'm giving you, but you have to come up with a whole strategy. Don't believe that most people know what we are doing here in the church. 90% don't believe it, don't know it, and we have to think from their perspective.
So I guess this will be our last question. We're running out of time. So the question that, as a matter of fact, received the most votes is this. Question about emotional health. What is your opinion on modern psychotherapy and antidepressants?
We are a connection of spirit, body, and soul. And when your body is sick, you can pray for healing, but you should also go to the doctor. And if your soul is sick, there is no problem with going to a psychotherapist. There's no problem. As Christians, we have to understand that emotional health is very closely linked with the spiritual maturity. And I think as church, we have not done a good job in showing emotional health. So I believe psychotherapy is okay. I believe medication is okay. And we also need Christian communities and a form of spirituality that helps people to become healthy in an emotional way. And we have not done a great job there as a church. We have to do our homework there.
Thank you, Dr. Hartl. Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Hartl.